Hello Goobers, it is me, your favorite Goober, and this will be my manga yap video. But first things first, as you can see in the background, this is a Silksong playthrough, so if you care about spoilers, there is going to be the first roughly hour of gameplay. This is a Steel Soul playthrough, so I'm already experienced. I'm not exploring for the first time. I even pull off one skip during this, so just to let you know, like there is some spoilers, but it's nothing too crazy. Quite literally the first hour of gameplay, and that's everything. So just wanted to get that little warning out there before anything else. With that out of the way, there is a little bit to talk about. To be honest, I have 50 minutes of time to yap, but I really don't know if I'm going to go that far. It'd be really easy to do so, but I'm going to really try and remain condensed with the information that I do provide because I don't want to spoil too much. There's a lot of things that I want to have happen, but I want them to be surprises. There's reveals that I don't want to have right out in the open. But then at the same time, I do want to talk about some things. So I think first things first, it's really crucial that I mention this. This is a very early stage manga. There's a lot of answers that I myself don't even have. And truthfully, I'm probably going to have many moments, if I'm not careful, where I just come up with stuff on the spot. And maybe I like it, maybe I don't. But I can see that happening. So, it's the kind of person that you're going to be listening to. I just wanted to make sure I got that out of the way because it's very early in development, as I said, and so a lot of things are both subject to change and also just not filled in. Lots of blanks that I got to work on. And yeah, I don't know. I felt like it was really important to mention that. So, without further ado, what kind of manga am I doing? This is an easy thing to answer, but I'm gonna try and tell you that's not That's not the way I want to word that sentence. It's a really easy thing to answer. It's basically a shonen, but I'm trying to do something a little different with the genre. Nothing too like crazy or out of the blue, but I do want to break it up a little bit. I want to change the formula. So with traditional shonen, I'm not here to say that I'm the most experienced with, hundreds of series under my watch belt. Like, I've only really seen really the more mainstream things. I'm not the type to kind of go out and watch a bunch of things that are usually popular. I don't really care. I'll watch really anything. I just haven't been watching a lot of shows in recent. So a lot of this comes from my past experience when I was a lot younger, and then with the more recent series that I have seen that are shonen. And that's all just to say that I'm sorry if it's not accurate, but from my personal experience with shonen, I've noticed kind of a formula where we're introduced to our main character, usually even kind of the main cast within the first few chapters, and from there we kind of get a call to action. So, what is the story about? Why should I care about these characters? What are they fighting for? Um, are there any looming threats, or is there any interesting history, um, and that kind of question. And then usually kind of builds up the character, learns a little bit about them. We figure out what makes the main character special, and from there we kind of have a few different routes that I think get taken, but ultimately it kind of builds up to kind of a big level up to some degree, and then usually your first big bad, whether or not they're truly defeated or they're defeated but they'll be back later, you kind of see that happen, and then it's on to the next big bad and the next power up, and usually you kind of hint towards those bits of the story where it's like, ooh, what was that moment, or maybe this was something important, and so it just kind of does a little cycle like that, where it's like, here's something new, and then we get a new bad guy, and then we defeat the bad guy, and then it's on to the next one, all while we develop characters, they improve themselves, and it's almost formulaic, not like fully. There's definitely a lot of unique things going on, but it gets a little stale with some of the stereotypes, and I wanted to kind of break that down. And that goes even into just it being a shonen. I kind of want a hybrid shonen alongside like rom-com and slice of life, right? I want to have moments where that's the case. And so my idea for doing that was to have the shonen moments, right? Let's say we get to a point in the story where the big bad is defeated. You know, whatever the villain is for a given arc, they're defeated. So the characters now have some downtime. I feel like a lot of the times you might see in like a shonen where that downtime is completely skipped. Like, oh yeah, 3 months ago we beat XYZ, and during those 3 months we've just been training, yada yada, but the next big thing is coming up, you know? And it kind of goes from there. But instead of skipping those 3 months of peace in exchange for getting the story to move along, I want to take those 3 months and experience those moments of peace, those moments of kind of calm, not under duress. It's just like it gives you room to breathe and just have those slice of life kind of arcs and some rom-com thrown in the mix as well, right? And I don't really know how I'm going to do that. I don't think I've seen that done before, and if there is, I'd like to see how they did it, because it interests me a lot. I'd like to kind of get that right, because I think that to some, it might be a really big turnoff. I think some people might be reading their nice little shonen and then get hornswoggled when they realize that suddenly these wacky, silly goofballs are in the middle of like a rom-com. Like, huh? Bit of a shift here. And I feel like that might turn some people away. And so I'm just going to kind of go with my vision. I'm going to have to trust myself. This is the first time I've ever written a story, let alone a manga. So I've probably got a lot to learn in that regard. But I want to have an excuse to explore the characters in a more personal sense. I don't want to just have character development during a training arc, during combat. Like, I want characters to also develop outside of that, you know? And this gives me time to explore some fun little side characters and give them time to shine, right? Like, sure, maybe they're not the strongest, so they're not going to be on the front lines all the time, but let's say the community really likes, you know, insert goofball here, and they want some time with that character. Well, I can easily see myself like committing some time to them or making them relevant to some degree during one of these like slice of life arcs. And it also allows just other characters to grow outside of like this pretty crazy environment of, you know, combat and stress and all that. Like, it just lets them breathe, and it allows me to use these characters in more than what is traditionally shonen. I think it would be nice, but I'm worried that, you know, if I don't do the pacing right, it could be problematic. But yeah. So that's kind of one thing about my manga, is I want to it's definitely shonen. Like, at the end of the day, it is definitely a shonen. It's mainly what inspired me. There's a lot of focus on combat, and there's a lot of similarities just in general with the shonen archetype. But I do really want to have moments that are extended periods, right? Like whole arcs, maybe 2, in between these big shonen moments. and I want to have these characters grow together. Uh, like another great example, I mentioned earlier, breaking stereotypes. Like, I want to have romance be integrated into the story. I'm not going to have the main character start off with a romantic interest, but I do want to show a blossoming romance between the main character and their eventual lifelong partner. But I want to show that and not just be like, ooh, these two have some chemistry, and then it's the finale of my manga and there's a confession. Like, I want there to be a wedding in the middle of the manga. Like, I want to do stuff like that, and I want to have other characters be allowed to grow both with their friendships amongst one another and even some romances with the side characters. I want to have a lot of that. I think it could be really fun, and so yeah, I'm going to try my best to do and incorporate all that, but giving myself that extra space to have those slice of life and rom-com moments, I think will really help to get me the character development that I kind of want, if that makes sense. Hopefully. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a goofball and I don't know what I'm saying, but it kind of makes sense to me. But I'll move on to my next point. That was the general kind of genre pitch of my manga. But now I am going to go over kind of just like the basic idea of the world. And I think I'm going to start with the thing that is the least concrete out of all of this, which is the time era. I think I'm going to have to make a custom era because I don't want modern at all. I don't want futuristic at all. But I also don't want pure medieval, but I would like a lot of medieval things. It's kind of weird. Like, what's a good example? Is there any series that has a good example? I'm thinking something along the lines of maybe Soul Eater? Maybe that's too modern for what I'm trying to do. Maybe something a little less than Soul Eater, but maybe like a little more than Naruto, at least Shippuden. I'm on like the war arc. I don't really know how advanced their technology gets, if it advances that much, but from what I can tell, they've got like basic electricity, but they're still not very modern. They've got some kind of modern medical practices, but there's no crazy technology. If I remember correctly, that's very, very different for Boruto, but I don't know. I haven't seen Boruto. I just believe I remember seeing like somebody was clowning a USB scroll or something. So they've clearly got, technology to some degree. But in terms of Shippuden, it seems like they've got general electricity. Obviously, they understand gravity. And the reason that I mentioned those two things is because my story is based around elements. And I have 6 elements. 2 of them are like brand new in my world. And then the main 4 are the like established elements. And that does lead me very well into my next point, which is what part of this? I don't know the terminology. Well, it leads me to my power system, which I'm not fully done with yet, so I'm trying to collect my thoughts here to make sure that I say it in the right way I want to. Oh, I did 2 skips. That's another skip right there with that little guy. Distracted, my bad. So yeah, let's talk about my power system. I have now mentioned kind of the era that I'm trying to achieve. I think it's important that I don't do like anything too crazy with modern technology, because I don't want to imagine thinking about the modern world while integrating this like magical system. It'd be something that is just ugh, too much. I just want something simple. But that does lead me to my power system. It's an elemental story, and it's not really something that's a secret. It'll be pretty easy to figure out. But a little bit of history from my world. The powers are kind of cool. Without saying too much, they come from the idea that humans recognized collectively the importance of the given element to their survival. And that's what spawned the ability to control these elements. And then there's some fun lore that I recently changed with regards to the gods of these elements, because there are these very powerful spiritual beings that manifest as basically the god of the given element. I call them deities because I don't think god really feels like the best word. I think it's also just more fun to say deity. I don't know if there's a crazy difference. I'm pretty sure they're considered like the same thing. You know, god, deity. Correct me if I am wrong. I'm always open to being corrected on anything I say. But I recently changed that lore, and I think it's important that I don't mention too much about it, because I think it could be really cool when that revelation drops. So I don't want to speak too much about that. However, back to the point with the 4 elements. They were manifested through the collective understanding that these elements were important to survival. And the 4 main elements are exactly what you're thinking they are. Earth, wind, fire, water. Those are the main 4. Those are the important 4. And they are the most developed. And within the story, they are, until we learn that it's not true, they are the only 4 elements that have been present for quite a long span of history. And during the story's development, it's a pretty important early part of the story where we introduce the concept of 2 brand new elements that are kind of coming into the world, and the story kind of starts around that same era of time. So we'll kind of learn more about the other 2, which is electricity and gravity. Gravity is the only element that doesn't have a sub-element, or a subtype, not sub-element, but just a subtype. I decided that I wanted to have a little bit of uniqueness to my elements, and so I came up with a subtype for all of them. The most lazy one was probably water, because I couldn't figure anything out too specifically, but I went with ice. And the reason I feel like it was lazy is because if you can manipulate matter, which would be water, then naturally you'd be able to manipulate the state that it is in. So if you were to heat it up, you could create hot vapors, and if you wanted to cool it down, you could make ice. And so when I came up with the idea that ice is the subtype, it felt really lazy because it wasn't super duper unique. For example, the one that I'm most proud of would have to be Earth. So you have kind of the rocks, the minerals, all that kind of comes with that, and being able to control that element and what you might expect. And then you have the subtype for Earth, which is plants, fauna. I'm also including fungus, and I don't really know if it's right to include this, but my brain is saying it's it makes sense. But coral, I don't really know what I'm gonna do with that yet, but it's there, and think it could be interesting to mess around with that. But that's the subtype that I'm most proud of, and to me it's like it just really represents what I want them all to be, which is something that's unique, stands out, and allows itself to have a place amongst its own element without like being too unique. It's still very much related to the given element. So for example, plants are obviously still related to like Mother Nature and that concept. So yeah, I was really happy with that. Another one that I was really happy with was actually the um, electricity. I learned about magnetism. I don't know where I got the misconception of magnetism, but I had no idea that like electricity and electromagnetism, like I just it didn't click in my mind that magnetic and electricity are in a similar conversation. Like they're in the same conversation. They're not like super vastly different. So that was really fun to learn when I was doing that. And then we have fire. And I have no idea how I'm going to do this yet. But I do know that I've selected radiation as the fire alternative subtype. And I gotta say, the concept is really nice. I do like that, but oh boy, is it difficult to think of powers for that. There is not a single power that I have developed for radiation. It's a very complex topic, and I'll get to this point a lot more, but science has a big play in my manga, but I'll get to that here in a second. So we've got radiation and flame. Fire is a form of radiation. I mean, it's just what heat is. And so I was like, oh, that works out. And I was struggling with the alternate type for fire for quite a while, and I landed on radiation because it made sense, but I cannot think of a different subtype for this right now, but this does work. So future me is going to have to develop powers eventually for that one, but for now it's just kind of there. Lastly, there's air. The air subtype is sound, which I'm excited. I think that's very interesting. It can play into some fun powers. And then, fun fact, at a certain decibel range, it no longer becomes sound, it becomes a shockwave. So, that'll be fun to play around with. Other than that, though, gravity doesn't have an alternate element, both because it would be cool to have an element that literally is just the thing, which is gravity, and also because looking into the ideas of gravity and different explanations for like just it gets to a point. Gravity itself, I think, is relatively simple. It's very complex, but like it's relatively simple. But when you try to break into theoretical sciences and then you take those theoretical sciences and try to extrapolate like a power from it, it's like, oh my god. What the? No. And plus, gravity itself is really strong. I don't want to spam gravity, so I think I might honestly just make gravity a rare element. Not that any of them are explicitly rare, but I think that maybe during gravity's emergence, it was less likely to come up into play. That way, I don't have to worry about these gravity manipulators, because it is a pretty crazy power to imagine somebody wielding, but it's not too crazy. So, yeah. I don't know. I also think it makes it unique, right? It makes it unique. I think it's kind of fun. So I mentioned air, mentioned earth, fire, mentioned that I didn't really like water because I thought it was lazy, but it's still good enough. Oh, I guess I should mention for water, um, when somebody is like born with the affinity for ice, they're more naturally inclined to the ice, which means that it just comes naturally to them. Any water user can learn to wield these hot vapors and or ice, but it's just difficult to learn it. And so if you have the affinity for it, it comes naturally to you. And even for some, water can be difficult to manipulate because they're so used to the rigidness of ice. It's kind of like a different flow. And so learning that different flow is difficult. Because even a liquid has more resistance versus like the vapors, which are extremely hot, but they're way more kind of like free and flowy. So, yeah. I don't know. I haven't really developed too much on the hot vapor side. It's an idea that I've kind of recently come up with because I know that water can get really, really hot, but at some point that just turns it into like a vapor, as I said. And I don't know. I wanted to look into geysers and how they work and how much, uh, volumetrically speaking, they have with liquid and how much power they have. I don't know. I've got a lot to look into for science. But yeah, I mentioned electricity and magnetism, and then gravity doesn't have one. So yep, we're all good there. Um. Ooh, yeah. Let's do that one. Oh, perfect, because I mentioned it earlier too. So, science is going to play not a dictating role within my manga, but it is going to inspire me. I really want to care about the small details. Now, I'm not going to have science be the only thing, it has to be scientifically accurate or theoretically powerful. Like, no. Science is only there to enhance the story. It's not there. It's like a seasoning. You're not going to only use that seasoning, but it's important to like have multiple seasonings, and I feel like sprinkling in some science realism can be kind of fun, right? Obviously, and I do sincerely want to like make a point about this. I care about taking my liberties to have cool powers over scientific realism. I care so much more about that. So I will be taking my liberties. I will be having my fun. However, I also think that science is kind of cool, and I want to incorporate it. And the way that I'm going to do that is by kind of looking into how things really work in the real world, seeing how I can turn that into maybe a power, maybe I can expand on it, and then once I reach the kind of limits that the science allows, um, I'll take my liberties from there and have some fun. But yeah, I think that science is cool, and I think taking inspiration from what could theoretically be possible and seeing how that might affect the world, it's just interesting, you know? Like, oh, that's a major spoiler. I really don't want to say that. Should I? Does it really matter? I guess I'll be vague, but I care about learning about like things, for instance, like how absolute zero affects the environment, right? So let's say there's like a sustained field where it is to a point of absolute zero, like molecular stasis, and it's sustained. Nothing is causing movement within this field. Like nothing can cause energy. There's no energy in this field. It is absolute zero. I would love to know how that would affect anything that like comes into it. and so I've been meaning to look into that actually. But yeah, you know, stuff like that. It's just really cool, and I've also just been learning a lot, and it's kind of fun to learn and then incorporate it. So I wanted to kind of mention that. I don't really know if I articulated myself in the best way, but that's what I get for winging it for 30 minutes straight. All in one take. Oh, this is lovely. I like this. What else is on this list of things to mention? Oh, that was it. Really? I didn't mention it in my list, but this is something that I care about, but I'm not going to like make a point about it within my story. It's just going to kind of be a thing. But I'm going to care about inclusivity, and I want to have a lot of moments where you kind of realize, oh, well, I didn't realize that character was like that. Oh, I didn't realize they like that. I don't want to. I don't really want to. No. The main character is bisexual. Yeah. We need more representation, frankly, of bisexuals. So I decided to make the main character bi, and I'm really happy. I look forward to their storyline. It's not like a big deal that they're bi, but it's just like a thing. It's just like a note. An outsider looking in would be like, oh, this character is just gay. But no, it's not that. The character's bisexual. And it's not really something that's going to be directly mentioned. I think. I don't really know. It depends on how I go about these points. But like, I want to be inclusive. In a world that's medieval and doesn't have a lot of technology, I don't really know how I could go about trans inclusion. I want to have a trans character, maybe like 2. And I know that the lesser of the 2 represented are female to male. And I kind of wanted to have representation there. It's very doable. Like, you can be trans just by simply stating, I am trans. And immediately, like, you're supported. Just because it's what you are, right? If you suddenly wake up and say, I want to be a guy, or I want to be a girl, or I want to be whatever, then, like, you're trans, right? Just plain and simple at the end of the day. And so I could always just do that for the character, but I don't know. I want to be tactful. I need to do some research. On the topic of inclusivity, I really want to go around to different communities, because I might be bisexual. I say I might, but like, I am, right? However, I understand that my experience, frankly, is vastly different from the average bisexual, and I would probably be better off going and, you know, taking experiences from queer individuals across a large spectrum, right? As well, though, is minority groups. I want to talk to a lot of, what's a good way? No, I think I'll just list it, right? I want to include a lot of different ethnicities and cultures as well into my story. Most notably, like, I'm going to have a very important Samoan character. She'll be very integral. Later, I admit, not a character we're going to meet right away. It'll be a little while, but, you know, she's very important, and I want to get a lot of feedback and a lot of information from Samoan individuals. I think that it's really important that I go and I talk to these groups, right? Talk to black individuals, talk to Asian individuals, talk to, you know, Hispanic and Latino individuals, right? I want to get a wide variety of characters, a wide variety of personalities, a wide variety of experiences. And the way that I want to go about it is I don't want to just make it about the fact that these characters are XYZ, but I want to take the time to really learn about these cultures and groups so that way when it's there and it's present, it isn't just like a thing that's kind of half baked. It's like, oh, this guy gets it. This guy understands this and that, or this guy kind of knows what's up. That's what I want. And to do that, I'm going to go around and talk to these communities. Plain and simple. I'll learn about their experiences and all that. But I really want to be inclusive. I don't think that I've really mentioned that anywhere during my time making this manga and even these videos. But I do care about inclusivity, and I think it could be fun. And I want to make sure I do it in a way that it's just like in the background. Like, yeah, this character is black, but I'm not going to talk about, you know, black injustice and make that like a whole thing around this character. I'm going to let them breathe, and maybe something happens to them that, like, you know, isn't right, but I'm not going to make it like a main point to that character where they're always just facing, you know, this problem like the people in real life have to face. I want these characters just to kind of be allowed to just exist, you know? I don't want to be disrespectful either when I go and make these characters. So that's why I'm making such a point to mention that I'm gonna go and talk and listen to so many different people, hopefully. I don't know. I kind of winged all that. I didn't have any of that planned, so I do apologize if coherency was not my strong suit there. Yeah, I can definitely say this. I look forward to learning about all these different people. So, yeah. Again, sorry if that wasn't very coherent, or if I just kind of rambled, maybe looped back a few times. It was an unplanned point that I was making, so, yeah. Let's see, I don't know if there's anything else too crazy to mention. Yeah, so I mentioned power system. Ooh, I didn't mention that. It's related to my power system. It's like its own little power system within my story. Now, granted, I'll be honest with you, I almost lost my run there. If I didn't jump, I would have died. Oh my god. That ended too damage. Sorry, back to my point. I did come up with a idea for a system where two characters between one another can make a pact. This system, at its very basic, can allow a character to wield more than one element. One hard-coded rule for my story is that no one individual under any circumstance can be born with the ability to control and manipulate more than one element. That is a hard-coded rule. I guess I never mentioned that. Why didn't I put this on my list? This manga is a planned-out manga. I am not going to be freeballing, like, okay, here's chapter 1, where do we go from here? No, I've got many moments that I want to lead up to, many character moments, many plot developments, reveals. I got things I want to lead up to, but I'm just not, like, I'm not fully gonna say it all. I need to be careful now. But I have a lot of ideas and things I want to get to, right? Just plain and simply, just a lot of things I want to get to. So, knowing that, I have a lot of things planned out. What was the original point that I was talking about? Oh yeah, I've got like hard-coded rules, and I've got like I basically before I even start writing chapter 1, I'm going to have my power system completely mapped out. All the developments, all like the pinnacle of power that can be is there. There's not going to be any like further development where it's like, oh, actually there's this new power source and we're just going to like shoehorn this into the story. No, everything is what it is. There are limits to powers, and while you can get really, really strong, and it takes basically a whole journey to reach the end for these powers, like, there's just, you're not going to get, like, Super Saiyan, and then Super Saiyan 2, and then Super Saiyan 3, and then Super Saiyan God, and then Ultra Instinct, and then True Ultra Instinct, and then, I don't know, right? But there's always another level, another power-up, another, thing. I don't want that. I want to have it to where it's like, okay, here's the whole system. We'll work towards this. This is the end point. You can't get stronger than that. Boom. I guess that was a side tangent, but it was an important one. I thought it was a cool one. I also was mentioning packs. This is a power system within my own power system, and it is not fully developed. But a very, very, very basic idea is that a character can make a pact with another character and they can share each other's powers. I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I could make it a limited power. Maybe you can only, gain so much from a pact. Maybe the cost is pretty high, but you can get a lot of power. Maybe there's different tiers, different things you can do to make a pact, right? What is a pact is an interesting question. So, yeah, it's questions you gotta ask sometimes. But I don't know. I'm not comfortable fully talking about it yet because it is in development, very early stages of it being in development. But it's going to be fun. It's going to let me break some rules. I've always kind of had the idea of like, oh, what can kind of happen if, these two powers could combine? Like if I wanted to make the ultimate speedster, what would I need to do that? How can I make somebody as fast as possible in my universe where their whole focus is speed? I came up with the idea for an air and electricity. Boom. How do they do that? Well, I've got some time. Let me explain it. Basically, the air part of the individual's power set would remove the wind drag from in front of them so they wouldn't be bogged down by wind resistance. And then they would also enhance their sprint speed with a force of air behind them. So there's a reason why certain world records in Olympic running aren't counted, and it's when wind speeds are at a certain, well, for lack of a better word, speed. It disqualifies world records because it's an unfair advantage. It quite literally pushes you forward during these races, and it helps you conserve your energy, it helps you conserve your speed, and yeah, it's just like it's known to make you faster if you run with the wind, and the same can be said by going against the wind. You can be slowed down by it, so that's why you want to reduce the resistance in front of you. So the air part of this individual would increase their speed by using a high pressure like wind gust to boost them forward, and then they would reduce the drag on them by kind of creating a pocket in front of them with no air. But then to run even faster, they would enhance nervous system, I don't know if it's the right term to say nervous system, but they would enhance the capacity for their brain to send and receive signals. That is electricity. At the end of the day, that is electricity. You're a robot with flesh, blood, right? So, like, your brain sends signals and receives signals through electricity. Perhaps, if I'm wrong, I'm going to sound so silly. I think I'm right. I'm, like, really confident that I'm right, but I don't have my phone near me right now, so I can't check. I think I'm right, though. All I know is that your brain does send and receive electric signals. I'm pretty sure. And you can enhance that with the control of the electricity element. And you do that by helping you send and receive signals at a much faster pace. Right? There is a human limitation to how fast you can react, how fast you can move your body. I think it's a biomechanical limitation is what it's called, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's a limitation, and you can help overcome that, which means that you can, you know, pick up and put your leg down faster. You can process information faster, so even though you're moving around you even faster, you can still process everything and react to it, right? So it's just some basic stuff like that. It's fun to think about, like, the hypothetical speedster. So this person has like a pocket in front of them of just zero air, nothing there. They have a wind gust behind them, increasing their speed, and then they're enhancing their biomechanical ability to sprint and react with the electricity, and now they are speedy, right? And the only way that I can do that within my power system is a pact. And so this hypothetical speedster, which I probably make an actual character out of, is then allowed to exist. Versus here's an electricity guy who enhances, you know, his reaction speed and his biomechanical ability. And then here's like this wind girl who enhances her speed with an air pocket in front of her, reducing her drag, and then a high pressure gust of wind to thrust her forward. Right? Now I can just like combine these two characters and make this fun speedster. So, yeah, I think packs are interesting. I just don't know how I'm going to balance them. I want to make sure that they are important, but I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. I think there's a lot of work to be done in that regard. Alright. I hope that was okay. I don't want to say too much about, like, the story. I think I actually managed to do really good on that. But to leave off here, because it's, like, literally the first, like, few chapters, we'll learn this. It's not a spoiler. There is some shenanigans brew in this little city. And we'll learn more about who is behind some of these attacks, I'll say. But for now, there is a ramping and, well, a growing threat. I think is the better way to word it. There's a growing threat, and the Moon Deitess recognizes that. She's been dormant for quite some time, so her reemergence is a big deal. Mainly because people in power want her power to themselves, and so they want to control whoever has been blessed by her. Well, we come to find out the main character gets blessed by her. He happens to be the right person in the right place at the right time, but it's still really important to mention that he was the right person, even if he got, you know, main character luck where he just was in the right place, right time, right? He was still chosen. And so the story kind of kicks off with her blessing Ryanon, the main character, and we kind of get to learn more about him. We learn why the Moon Deitess went dormant. But that's everything. Holy crap, it's going to end here in a few seconds. So good night and good luck. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.